Good. Aloha. Aloha. My name is Serge Kahili King. Welcome to the Hawaiian Art Museum, Aloha International's Resource Center, and our Sunday morning talk story. We get into the talk story part of the morning, where we talk about Hawaiian culture, history, legend, language, healing, and the philosophy we call Huna, based on 7 ideas about life. That the world is what you think it is, there are no limits, energy flows where attention goes, now is the moment of power, to love is to be happy with, all power comes from within, and effectiveness is the measure of truth. We talk about all these things in the way that I was brought up in this knowledge, and that's by question and answer. And I'm going to answer a question before we begin, and then you can take the next steps on today's journey. First of all, I have to make a correction. The last time we did a taping, I was talking about the drums as part of the culture of Hawaii. And one of the things that I said was that in the making of the old drums, they never used carved human figures on the bottom. And I found out since that that's incorrect, because in the Bishop Museum there are at least 2 drums that have human figures carved on the bottom. Okay? So it doesn't matter how much you think you know, there's always room for increasing your knowledge. So I just wanted to share that such drums do, or did at least, exist. But what I want to share with you today is a bit of culture, something a little unusual. This is a bit more of a modern culture, but it is so Hawaiian because it's known, it's almost like a symbol of Hawaii and a symbol of aloha, which is love and greetings, all over the world. And that's something called the aloha shirt. And the aloha shirt began, actually it was a Chinese man, Ellery Chun, who was a tailor in Honolulu. In 1936, he wanted to have a new product for his shop. So what he did was, he didn't actually do the tailoring, he had it made. He got some Japanese material called yukata cloth, the kind of material the Japanese have that has all the designs on it. Maybe you've seen it. Beautiful gowns, kimonos and things are made from that. And they had no Hawaiian cloth at that time, so he got some of this Japanese cloth, and he had about several dozen shirts made, and he put them in the window of his store, and he put a sign on them, and he called them aloha shirts. They were an instant hit. So then he got his sister, Ethel, and she was an artist, and so she began hand painting the cloth for the first aloha shirts that are now, I think, in the Smithsonian Museum. And so she painted fish, a fisherman, and she painted tapa cloth designs from the old Hawaiian tapa cloth. And those were the first real Hawaiian style aloha shirts. And they had the square bottoms, and just like a shirt, just like we're familiar with today. So then they really took off, however. Those sold good, but after the war, in the 1940s, that's when the shirts really took off, with all the American troops and the visitors and everybody coming to Honolulu. And so that's when some of these things became extremely popular and became vintage. These are collector items, these 3 that I brought, part of my collection. And these are called silkies. Not because they're made of silk, but because they're made of rayon, and they feel silky. Okay? And this is one of the old designs from the 40s, not the original ones, but from the 40s, so it's quite old. I have no idea what it's worth. But this is a design from a song called Princess Pupuli Sells Her Papaya. And it's an old Hapa Haole song, it's called, half English, half Hawaiian. And so that's the theme on this one, is just that song and the words of some of the words of the song there. This one is from a couple of artists, Savage and McIntosh. I don't know if you've ever seen the menus that they used to have from the cruise ships, from the Matson lines, and that used to come to Hawaii a long time ago. Today you can see those designs on trays and pictures and things like that. Always beautiful designs of a very romanticized Hawaii. When, you know, all the people gathered food and partied and praised the chiefs and life was wonderful. Those artists are the ones that did this type of design. Okay, so this is also from the 40s then. Okay. And then finally, this one has no label. We know it's an old design. It might be late 40s, early 50s. This is Tahitian, very colorful, taken from the paintings of Gauguin, and just a lot of beauty on this. So I just wanted to show you some of these Hawaiian shirts, which nowadays there's a company in Hawaii that has accounts all over for selling Hawaiian shirts. They have 1,500 sales accounts. Only 10% of those are in Hawaii. All the rest of those accounts are selling Hawaiian shirts all around the world. So this is one of the ways in which Hawaiian culture is reaching out and affecting many people in many places. Okay. All right, now, questions on the things I mentioned: the Hawaiian culture, history, language, legend, healing, and huna. Who would like to start? Yes.
I'd just like to share. I bought this shirt over 50 years ago.
Ah.
Yeah.
That may.
How much is it worth now?
That's probably, no, the question is you bought this shirt over 50 years ago in Honolulu, and the question is how much is it worth? Well, what's interesting is the blue background, which is the design that was used on most of the earliest shirts. So maybe you could go to eBay and find out, okay?
Those bamboo buttons.
Yeah, bamboo buttons. That's really interesting. It might be, see, the blue background is one of the telling factors of the oldest style shirts. The buttons on those I have over there, I have coconut buttons on one, wooden buttons on another, and metal buttons on the last one. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. Anything else?
You mentioned that they sometimes had us hold up in festive occasions. Do they have the nets finished?
Yes.
Prepared? How much fishing was actually done with a spear back in the olden days?
Okay, question is how much fishing was done with a spear back in the olden days? Almost none.
No.
It was almost entirely nets. They had nets that they would use in the shallow waters, and maybe you've seen those. These are the weighted nets you can find in a lot of places of the world. It's a net that is circular, and it has weights tied all around the outside, and the person who's throwing the net takes it in the middle, and then kind of like a lasso, where he sees an indication of fish, tosses it out, and down it goes and captures the fish. It's a shallow water net, and far, far easier and more productive than spearing. Okay, I'm not going to say there were no spears used. Okay, I've learned my lesson about that, but I do know that they were not used extensively. It was mostly netting, even in shallow water. Okay. Yes.
It seems that this is the season for whales birthing. What were the cultural relationships with the whales themselves, or just
Okay.
a way of honoring or acknowledging?
Question is, it's to mention that this is a season when the whales are in the islands. We're speaking of primarily the humpbacks. There are others, but those are the most dominant that we see. And what is the cultural relationship of the Hawaiians with the whales? Well, first of all, you got to remember, for the most part, the whales are deep ocean fish. And the Hawaiians, while they were deep ocean fishermen, didn't fish for whales in the deep ocean. Most of the time, they would either encounter the whales by seeing them out there, or they would once in a while wash up on the shore. They did not hunt the whales, except maybe in a couple legends. There's a legend of Maui in which, or Maui is his name. Maui is the island, Maui is the demigod. And there's a legend in which he is told to go capture a giant fish. Now see, the Hawaiians called everything in the sea, every kind of sea animal was which is usually translated as fish, but it was applied to dolphins and whales and everything else. So anyway, a giant fish, which was probably a whale, and if he could hook that fish, and that fish would circle the islands and pull all the islands together. Well, this is a metaphorical legend, but it does indicate something. Obviously, they weren't going to use a hook, so it's real metaphor. But the nature of the fish being so big was probably a whale, is what they had in mind. Now, they had names for the different whales, especially humpback and sperm whale. The humpback was Kohola, and there is a temple on the Big Island, one of the most famous of the temples and one of the largest of the temples, that was built by Kamehameha I. And this temple, because of its shape and the hill that it's on, is called Humpback Whale. Okay. The other type of connection is one of the most prized possessions of all would be something called Niho Palawa. Now, Palawa is a sperm whale. And Niho Palawa means tooth of the sperm whale. And there was a lei made of human hair with a big pendant on it. It looked, if you look at it from the side, it looks like a hook. If you look at it from the front, it's much flatter than that. It's actually symbolic of a human tongue. And it was a symbol of the power of words. And so only the highest chiefs had this. And it was hung on human hair, braided very finely. And it was hung on that because the power of words comes from the power of thought. That was the symbolism. But you can still see some old drawings that were done by some of the early Western artists who came to the islands, in which you can see some of the highest chiefs or highest ranking chiefs, even if they were young, wearing the Niho Palawa. Today it's a beautiful piece of jewelry made out of any material, but it comes from the sperm whale. And other than that, to my knowledge, the whale was never anyone's aumakua. It was never a spiritual guardian or protector, probably because it was mostly out in the far waters, except for this season, where it comes in close, but there's not a lot of year-round connections, so you don't want an aumakua that's going to go away and leave you, okay? So that's mostly it for Hawaiian cultural connections. Yes?
Regarding the question about hunting with spears,
Yes.
it's a kind of, let's say killing. How does it go with Aloha Spirit then?
Oh, you've got to understand, we kill anything that we eat. What matters is not whether you kill it, because that's how we're designed as human beings. Some people think that it's bad to kill bad to kill animals, but okay to kill plants. And for people who believe that everything is alive, you don't look on it that way. Killing, when it is done, and to use that term, was done for food. Oh, they had wars. That was a separate thing. but they had spears that they used for hunting, and they had spears that they used for killing other people during a wartime. Well, so how did all this coincide with the aloha spirit? The aloha spirit is what kept the people sane. The aloha spirit, this love relationship, was what acted as a kind of a cultural guideline to come back to. It's almost, in one sense, like the Christian concept of love. Thank goodness it's there. Okay? And it's a very powerful concept. Or the Buddhist concept of compassion. And one of the meanings of aloha is compassion. That doesn't mean Buddhists didn't fight and kill, and it doesn't mean certainly that Christians didn't fight or don't fight and kill. Even the message of Allah is one of love, and yet human beings do things that don't follow that. But we need those concepts so that we have something to serve as an ideal and something that we can move toward or move back to. And it served that purpose in Hawaii too. Yes.
In modern times now, Serge, is there an awareness of the lineage of the chiefs in present times?
Yes. Is there an awareness of the lineage of chiefs in present time? Yes, certainly not to the extent that it was in the old time, but there are still people. There's one family in particular that traces its lineage back beyond Kamehameha I, back way before Cook arrived. So there are still a few families who have maintained that chiefly lineage very clearly, okay, and can trace it back. There are many Hawaiians who trace back to chiefs of some kind. There's an organization, I think it's called the Society of Hawaiian Warriors, and they have about 100 members, all of whom have to trace their lineage back to the time of Kamehameha I or before. Okay? So there are different kinds of groups. There's the Order of Kamehameha, there's some that are connected to the Kalakaua family lines. So yes, these are people who are mostly grouped together for the sake of preserving that knowledge.
Are they a political force or a spiritual force?
I'd have not a political force at this time. Spiritual force, yes. Because although many Hawaiians don't care about the old ways or the old chiefly lines, many other Hawaiians do, and give that a lot of respect and take pride in even associating with the people who still carry those lineages. Okay, so a spiritual force is what they are. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I have another question. You were speaking of the power of the word. And even in the Christian and many traditions, it's the word, in the beginning was the word. And I was wondering if you could speak to how the Hawaiian language arose, and if there are any legends or origins of the language.
Legends or origins of the Hawaiian language? No. Now, one of the indications, of course, may have to do with the age. Very interesting concept in linguistics. That, and it goes contrary to what we ordinarily think. But in linguistics, it's been discovered that the more simple the construction of a language, the older it most likely is. And Hawaiian, although it can be used to describe and name everything, even modern concepts, there's a whole group of people now who are creating new dictionaries to cover all the modern concepts, and Hawaiian is flexible enough and creative enough so that those concepts can all be have names. But as far as the origin goes, nobody knows for sure. There are some linguists who think that it has Malay roots from Malaysia, Malaysian type language. On the other hand, we have some interesting discoveries, and there's a Hawaiian viewpoint here, because we find what are virtually Polynesian words in South America, in North America, throughout the Pacific, in Asia, and all the way into India. Now, the bias of most anthropologists is that the Hawaiians had to have come at some early date from Asia. Because the bias among most anthropologists is that nobody could possibly have sailed or been an ocean people without coming from a continental place. And of course, they think that it came from, the Hawaiians came from Asia. The Hawaiians do not think they came from Asia. There is absolutely no trace or smidgen of any legend or story that indicates that they came from somewhere else. Right? Now, because of their extremely exceptional navigational ability, it's known that they traveled to all the places around the Pacific. And so one of the thoughts is that the reason these other places have Polynesian words is because the Polynesians brought them there. And fact of the matter is, there is no substantial evidence to indicate otherwise. We do know that there were Polynesian peoples in South America, and at least one Polynesian tribe in Mexico has been found, not existing anymore, but were there. So we know they traveled. We know they have outlier groups in Melanesia and Micronesia. These were a traveling people.
You know, I realized my original question was having to do with sound, but
Yes.
what about gestural language?
Well, the Hawaiians had a very rich gestural language. Oh, yes. And these have been described by some of the early visitors. What different hand movements would make, facial gestures, body movement gestures. Like most people, they had a rich body of that. Right. This, by the way, is not originally Hawaiian. Okay, it has become Hawaiian by acculturation. It's been adopted. No one knows where it originally came from, except that it became popular in the 1950s. Okay? But it's not originally Hawaiian. You see it used two ways. You see it used this way, which is a kind of a winning, go for it gesture that was used, according to some sources, in early games of marbles in the 1940s. Okay? Why you win that you're knocking the other person's marble out of the circle, and okay, shaka, okay, and even the word shaka, no origin has been found for that word yet. And then there's a different way. Now the Hawaiians had a gesture like this, and now it's become adapted like this. This is also a shaka thing. This means hang loose. Ku'uvela, hang loose. Don't get excited. Relax. It's okay. And that's probably adapted from a far older Hawaiian gesture.
You know, that makes me think, you know, Crocodile Dundee, that he did this
That's
one
right.
to put the old water buffalo down.
That's right.
Be
Relax.
cool.
Right,
Be cool.
right. Yeah, that's right, if you remember that. Yes.
At the Hula Festival at Kirikako, that was last weekend, the Chandler family was recognized. They have 11 generations that
Yes.
they can recount back in Hawaiian. And specifically, Kapeka Chandler, who's the matriarch of that family, was in Wainiha, was the honoree. She was recognized. Her mother, Rachel Chandler, lived in Kalalau. And she was one of the people who was escorted out of Kalalau when they determined that it was no longer an okay place for people to live for some reason.
Right.
But it's really amazing to think that that was not that long ago.
That's right.
People had a whole society in Kalalau Valley. And it's just a curiosity. I was sitting here looking at these pictures over here that are in the case of the Hawaiian huts and the people living in them. They're down here, actually, anybody up to where you want to see. But I just some recollections, maybe you were there, Serge, but